Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, folks, we are currently recording now at 3:11 in the morning, and personally, I can't sleep. I can't sleep because you know what? I'm thinking about our New York Mets, and our New York Mets need help in the worst way. And the biggest place that we need help, it's no surprise. We need pitching, 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 and more pitching. But most importantly, I believe we need an ace. How you define an ace, that's up to you. But we need a guy who basically most teams have this guy. Most great teams have this guy. A pitcher who just doesn't start games, he sets the tone. When he's on the mound, the whole clubhouse stands taller. And we saw that when Nolan McLean came up in August. We saw that when Jacob deGrom pitched for our New York Mets for all those years. It is so damn important for so many reasons to have that ace on your team. Now, it would be beneficial to have more than one, two, three, possibly good pitchers who can be considered that ace, that stopper, that guy who sets the tone, that guy who ends the losing streak, that guy who extends the winning streak. It is so damn important. And imagine we had that guy on the team all year. Imagine we had a Garrett Crochet on the team. Imagine we had, dare I say, a Tarik Skubal on the team. Where would our New York Mets be? Even the 2025 Mets with all the flaws galore. But that's what an ace does. An ace compensates, alleviates, hides those flaws. And folks, Garrett Crochet, I argued a couple weeks ago, it would have been cake. Easy for the New York Mets to make the playoffs. So, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? It's basically simple. Our number one objective this offseason is to reshape, retool that starting rotation in the worst way. I'm tired of depending on Kodai Senga to be a top of the rotation guy. I'm not relying on Sean Manaea to recapture what he did at the end of 2024. David Peterson, he's a nice pitcher, but to put him or to pressure him into a number one or two, that's not where the Mets are going to be our strongest. David Peterson better suited for the mid to end part of the rotation. All right, folks. So what do we do here? What do we do? We're going to get into it. In this video, we will be talking about some very, very strong ace candidates, some very strong pitching candidates that the Mets can acquire through the free agent market and through the trade market. And I'm going to need your opinion. Drop your comments down below. What do you think? Again, great comments as always. And, great stuff as always. Again, I got to start off this video by thanking you. Great commentary. You motivate me. Continue to hit that like button. That is the best way, the best way to show your support for the channel and to help our channel grow, because this is our channel. So again, it does really help me out in the most immense way for those likes. And if you are new, I would definitely appreciate if you subscribe and join the family. Again, thank you. All right. So again, having an ace in our rotation is something that, okay, you could, one can argue that we don't need. But again, if you want to be that World Series team, it's pretty evident that your pitchers need to be on that next level. All right. So what are our options? Who is out there for the taking? Really, who is out there? And the number one guy that I saw the last couple of days, not that I think he's our number one option, but it's a guy by the name of Framber Valdez. Now, is he the best guy that we could potentially acquire? No, he's not. And we're going to get to that because, last year, the clear-cut favorite, in my opinion, was Garrett Crochet. This year, it's going to be another young gentleman, not by the name of Framber Valdez, but Framber Valdez, he really does offer some very intriguing characteristics. He really surely does. So what can a guy like Framber Valdez do for the New York Mets? And then in this video, I want to go beyond the numbers, right? Because if you look at the numbers, and the numbers are important because a lot of times past performance, may be an indicator of future performance, but you have to remember players age, and that tends to affect performance. Now, in the case of Valdez, he will be 32 years old. 32. So he's not a spring training. It's spring training. He's not a spring chicken. Oh my God, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh my God. Okay, so he's not a spring chicken, and he last year, decent numbers, 13-11, 3.66 ERA. That was his second highest ERA total of his career. I know he had a couple games where, he kind of gave up more than usual, but it is what it is. It is what it is. So, Valdez is, I would say also an innings eater. Since 2022, he ate up 201 innings, then 2023, 198, 2024, 176, 2025, 192. So he's been eating up innings over the last 4 seasons at a very, very high rate. Now, that could be alarming in one sense because you're going to be like, he's getting older. That's going to catch up to him. But, Valdez didn't really get his career started at least as an elite starter, I would say from 2021 on. In 2020, he was 26 years old, only threw 70 innings. It's not until really 2022 where he became that elite weapon. So that's over the last 4 years when he became that innings eater. Okay, so what does he employ? So Valdez employs a very heavy sinker / curveball profile. He has elite ground ball tendencies. So if you're the New York Mets have traditionally liked, at least in the past couple years, sinker ball pitchers. That's what they've liked. So Valdez mix is sinker 44% of the time, curveball 33%, changeup 18%, and he also has a slider and a 4-seamer that he sprinkles in. And his calling card is his late moving 2-seamer sinker, and then he buries batters with that hammer curveball. Okay, so we mentioned that he is very consistent in terms of volume eating innings over the last couple years. So that would be a breath of fresh air if you're a New York Mets fan. So that's good. We also looking run prevention. And his run prevention over the last couple years, not bad. I mean, if you base it on his ERA, 3.6 ERA, not crazy, but not bad. So 3.66 ERA, 3.75 FIP, 192 innings pitched, 187 Ks, and 1.24 WHIP. His career MOB is 3.36, and that's around a number 1B, number 2 in the rotation. Not that bad, but very, very strong numbers. So contact management, again, he generates a lot of contact in terms of the ground balls. So you know what? He does do things very, very well, in terms of what he tries to employ. Also, if you look at him being that big game pitcher, you're going to want to know how he's going to perform in October. And at his best in October, he really set the tone in the 2022 World Series, Game 6 in particular. He won that game. He pitched 6 innings, 2 hits, 1 run, 9 Ks, and he was also 3-0 with a 1.44 ERA in his overall postseason. Genuinely, that was an ace-level pitching performance in that postseason. So that is very good. But, if you zoom out, looking at the whole picture, the career postseason line isn't that great, folks. He's a 4.34 ERA pitcher over 85 innings. He's had some excellent high moments, as I just, detailed, but he's had also some messy starts. You're buying October capability, but it's not automatic dominance, to be absolutely fair. Okay, so let's go into why he potentially fits the Mets. Just the Mets. We're going to look into deeper reasons. Now, let's look at Citi Field in particular. Citi Field, and you measure the Framber, you look at it, the Framber Valdez pitch arsenal match? How does it match based on his pitch arsenal? Now we know Citi Field traditionally depresses home runs enough that a guy like Valdez, it gives a guy like Valdez that extra safety net. It really does. You really does. So you pair that with his naturally low homers per nine. He doesn't traditionally give up many homers per nine, and now you're engineering fewer 2 and 3 run shots, because there were times where he gave up those 2 and 3 run shots. Doesn't give a lot, but he gave up a couple that Citi Field should prevent. Okay. Now, what he also does is he's a guy that throws typically 6 or 7 innings. And what that will do is it'll eliminate and shorten the game for a taxed bullpen. And we know there was no more bullpen that was taxed than the New York Mets. Valdez has been that dude across multiple seasons that pitches close to 200 innings. That reduces leverage load for 7th, 8th, 9th, and really keeps Edwin Diaz in company in a cleaner space. It really does. And we got to start looking at that, folks. We can't keep having a lot of guys who struggle to get to 5 innings. I mean, I have many different things that I do throughout the day. I want to reshape this really rotation in a big way. I mean, this is not really for this video, but just the thing, this is a rough outline. We're going to get to this guy, but, let's just say we managed to be ultra aggressive. We throw a bunch of top prospects, we get a Skubal, right? And then we dip down to Miami and we want to continue to be aggressive. And then we swing a trade for Alcantara and we get Edward Cabrera. Again, you're going to have to give up prospects, but right then and there, the Mets just displayed how aggressive they're going to be, and they reshaped their entire rotation. Now you push Nolan McLean down to 4, Sproat, Ed Peterson. I'd like to get rid of Senga, Manaya, get those guys out of there. I don't want to worry about that. McGill, I'm tired of worrying about guys who aren't consistent. That's just a quick example. Well, how do you do it? We're going to get to trade formulas. We'll get to it in another video. But you know what? If you're wondering, how does it get it done? Let me give you one quick example from the trade simulator, baseball trade simulator. And if you're wondering, okay, how do we get a Skubal trade done? Let's see here. Baseball trade calculators. This is what we will do. All right, folks. I just literally had to pause the video because my screen just went black. All right. So I just wanted to give you an example. And again, we're going to continue with Mets ace options, but I threw out trade. So for a guy like Tarik Skubal, baseball trade values gives him a value of 51.6. That's based on his talent, how much salary he has, how many years he has left. And the good thing about, Tarik Skubal, if you want to trade for him, he's only got 1 year left. So good thing, maybe bad thing, he's more or less considered a rental, but that in turn does not plummet, but hurt his trade value. So if you're the New York Mets, how could you get to a value of 51.6? Now, I'll tell you, again, doesn't mean the Tigers are going to accept it. Doesn't mean you're going to like it. But here's how you can do it. You're going to have to give up top prospects. That's what you're going to have to do. So I have 2 top 5 prospects, and this is a trade that I heard S&Y, kind of a similar trade to this. But, I agree. You would have to do something like this. Jet Williams, you have to include a guy like him. He has a value of 23.1. You can include a guy like Jacob Reimer. He's a guy who's really elevated up the Mets prospect ranks over the last year. So if you want to trade him off of, getting higher value, that's not a bad thing. He's got a value of 13.5. He is also a Mets top 10 prospect. I think I saw he was either ranked 6 or 7. So you're giving up either your number 1, 2 prospect in Jet Williams, your number 6 prospect, and then Jonah Tong. Jonah Tong, you would have to give up him as well. He's either your top 3 or 4 prospect. So you're giving up 3 top 6 prospects. And this is, the Mets farm system has been elevated a lot in the last year. ESPN ranked them as the number 1 farm system. So they are doing a lot of good things. And then you would trade away a Nick Morabito, or somebody of that ilk. Doesn't have to be him, but that gets you up to a value of 56. Now that value 56 is over 51, which Tarik Skubal. And the funny thing is, a guy like Jonathan, his value is only 12. His value is only 12, but you're trading him off of being, winning all these awards in the minor leagues. You're trading him off of, his value, I don't think is reflected where it really is. Other guys in the Mets farm that have been rising, their values isn't really reflecting. But, here's something that you can do, some package you can do, 3 top 6 prospects. And this really sets the tone. I mean, this really sets the tone. And not only does this get you one of the best pitchers in all of baseball, not only does this put this stabilizing piece on the top of your team, it doesn't really affect any of your current major league talent. Jonathan, I don't really count him. Only pitched 3 games, 4 games, whatever. Doesn't affect your major league team. It just really improves your chances in a big way. And you know what? When I talk about ace, there are so many things that like an ace kind of does for you. It really does. I mean, like we didn't really talk about this, but the ace's impact on the team is massive. It really is. It is so massive. I believe it elevates the staff. True ace draws attention. Lineups. If you're going up against an ace the next day or the day after that, you're gonna hold the bat a bit tighter. It's gonna put a little more pressure on the opposing pitcher. It's gonna put a little more pressure on the opposing lineup. It does that in the regular season. It does that in the playoffs. Again, we also said, it gives you stability and it saves your bullpen by eating innings. A guy who is dominant will eat more innings. It gives you that extra playoff leverage, high leverage situations. You want a guy that is more or less elite. It really signals, confidence to the rest of the roster. Having an ace helps justify, also when you make moves in your offense, your bullpen, now you're more willing to upgrade your team. That's why last year, we made some upgrades, but, again, we didn't have the horses in the rotation. And not to mention, an ace gives you that psychological impact throughout the whole team. Again, it hurts the opposing team. It instills confidence in the team, the fan base, and the front office. It shows everybody that the team is committed for winning. And the Mets, who often chase star power, landing an ace is that statement move. It really does. I mean, we've chased star power all over the place. We haven't really got that ace in its prime. You could say Verlander, Scherzer, but that's not the type of ace I'm talking about. A guy at the back end of his career trying to capitalize one last time. That never passed the smell test. It really didn't. And 2023 was so indicative of why that doesn't work. Okay, so let me get back to the video. Again, we were speaking about Framber Valdez. Okay, so Framber Valdez, what he does and why he fits the Mets. The last thing, before I went off topic, again, I apologize. But while this video is going on, hit the like button. Subscribe if you like talking baseball. Okay, so the Mets were talking about run prevention. A ground ball guy like Framber Valdez is good for run prevention. Ground ball aces, look better when you got a guy like Lindor, who's a Gold Glove caliber guy. Brett Beatty's looking a little better at second base. We would need a good third baseman. Vientos is not really going to work. And I hear people say Murakami, but Murakami, if we got him, he would more or less be a first baseman if we went in that direction. Although, as the more and more I'm thinking about it, if you're going to get a guy and pay a guy like that, and I know he's 25, but he's horribly defensively challenged, why wouldn't you really keep Pete in that situation? A guy that can produce in the playoffs, can produce in New York, and that the fans have an attachment to, this team already embraces. I don't know. That's again a topic for another video. Okay, so again, he gives you that psychological and he gives you that identity value. All right. Now, it's not all sunshine and roses for Mr. Framber Valdez. It really isn't. It really isn't. The red flags, and there are red flags. there are red flags. And again, I'm not just going to the things that you could see. I want to try to give you some stuff that maybe you don't know. So when his sinker is not biting, and that happened early in 2025, it happened. His ground ball rate went down through his first four starts, really before stabilizing, the majority of the season. The batted balls really, were much more, they kind of doubled. If Mets run a below average infield or live in poor positioning windows, some of Valdez's run prevention evaporates. So that means that the Mets cannot employ a bad defense around Valdez. They just can't. They really can. And then when his sinker isn't biting, again, hitters, obviously, with any sinkable pitcher that the sinker ball's not working, you're going to get hit. You're going to get hit, and the ball's going to be elevated. Okay. So in 2025, the base on ball percentage was 8.5%. It wasn't disastrous, but he pushed pitch counts higher and higher, and it really left him with an ability with little margin. And when the curveball wasn't landing, again, this is why he had a 3.66 ERA in 2025. So as you could see, I believe this year his sinker ball didn't bite as nastily as it did in the past. And the curveball, he was a bit more consistent than he's been in the past. At least, that's what scouts have said. Okay. And again, the postseason volatility is real. 4.34 playoff ERA. We mentioned the 22 playoffs, which was magnificent, and I give him all the credit in the world for it. But again, overall, 4.34 playoff ERA. What does that scream to you? That screams like, hey, I can't trust the guy in big spots. And I honestly, at the end of the day, you're a guy who's going to be 32 years old. I don't really care how good you are in the regular season. I need an ace. An ace is about coming together, being that game changer, and being there when we need you the most. And if we're going to be a World Series team and you're not that consistent in the playoffs, all right. So, you got the postseason problems, his instability, the walk rate, the age, and the contract horizon. If you're looking for a 5 to 6 year deal at age 2025, and you're already seeing the stuff slip a bit, especially if his ground ball rate trends down and his curve loses bite, which some scouts started to notice. All right. So market reality and what the Mets offer kind of would look like. What can a Mets offer? And again, what we do it. Would we do it? Multiple outlets have him as the marquee pitcher, along with Dylan Cease, Ranger Suarez, etc. And we're going to talk about some other guys too. So again, stay tuned. Again, what is a practical contract? So you could structure it like this. Not that we're going to do it, but let's structure something here. So I got to give you something. So you could give him a 5-year contract, 125 between 125 and 145. That's an average AAV of 25 to 29 million. You can give him a 6-year vesting option if he, gets some, whatever you set as the indicators or the objectives in year 5. That 6-year vesting option can vest, and that could be for 25 to 30 million. That could be tied to innings. Again, we want him to be that consistent innings eater. But again, if you sign him for 5 year, that's age 32, 33, 34. So 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. So that's age through age 36. And the vesting 6-year option will be age 37. And again, what am I basing this off of? Well, Max Fried got that 8-year, $218 million contract. So again, this is 5-year, possibly 6 years. So, again, that would be reasonable based on last year's contract. You can give him annual innings bonuses, postseason start bonusing. A lot of guys, they want these partial no trade clauses, escalators for winning the Cy Young Award, stuff like that. Why this potentially could work. You're paying like a one strong number 2 for the first year, 1 to 3 years, 1 to 3 years. I mean, capping downside if ground ball goes down, if velo goes down, it's going to be a little bit of a sting for Mets because obviously we've had a couple bad contracts in the last year. But again, this is a chance that if you want a guy like Valdez, you have to take. Again, I'm not saying I would do this. I'm just throwing out numbers out there that, hey, this could be something that's viable for a guy like Valdez. I mean, Valdez might look at like 5 years, 125 or 5 years, 145 and, kind of laugh at that. I mean, 29 million a year until age 36 for a guy with a 3.66 ERA. And that's shown a regression with some of his, top, pitching, the sinker and the curveball, his repertoire. I mean, and also that it doesn't have that big playoff success and only getting older, that seemed like a decent contract for me. It really doesn't. I mean, it really does. Okay. So at the end, I'm just gonna give you pro case for Valdez. He has been durable, very innings eater friendly. City field confines could be very helpful to a guy like him in terms of his repertoire. He's capable in October, not guaranteed capable, but he has been capable. And again, from day one, you'll have that guy who can be in the top of the rotation. So again, he gives you that stable, almost ace-like guy. But again, I can't really consider him an ace. Now, the con case is he's older. He's very defense dependent. His base on ball percentage is not the best. He creates a lot of traffic on the bases. His, again, his age, the curveball and the sinker, those pitchers have shown some decline. And again, you got the postseason volatility. So if New York really shores up the infield and we pair him with a couple more swing and miss arms in the rotation, a 5-year, $130 to $145 million commitment may make sense and it may stabilize the rotation. But again, he's not the perfect pitcher by far. He's not the perfect pitcher by far. Now, another pitcher that many people may be kind of thinking of just because he's one of the guys available is a guy like Dylan Cease. Now, how does a guy like Dylan Cease, profile? How does he profile and how does he fit with the New York Mets? Now, Dylan Cease this past year, didn't have his best season. Really didn't have his best season. In fact, he has one of his worst seasons in a long time. He was 8-12, 4.55 ERA, 168 innings pitched, 11.5 strikeouts per nine, which was pretty good. A 1.32 whip, not very good at all. So this year, not a very good number, not very good numbers in terms of his overall numbers. But we all know that he's always had really good stuff, really good stuff. So let's take a deep dive. So in December of 2025, a little different than about 3 years younger. He's going to be 29 years old in December of 2025, so in a month or two. His career stats is 3.88 ERA, WHIP 1.27, K. He's about league average with strikeouts per 9 innings in 2025. Like I said, in 32 starts, he pitched 32 starts, so that was good. But his overall numbers not good, not good, not good. His underlying metrics, StatCast, average exit velocity, 88.6, hard hit percentage, 40% of the time, and barrel rate, 11%. His swing and whiff metrics, Cease's pitch mix, and miss rates have often ranked him in the top categories in those particular metrics. So, he has good strikeout upside. Everybody, we've always liked his stuff. I've always loved his particular stuff. I really do. Cease has averaged 183 innings pitched per year and made 30 plus starts regularly. I mean, if you look at him over the last 4 or 5 years, and that's really kind of, if you're the New York Mets, that's what you're going to look like in an ace, a guy who can be a reliable starter, a guy who can be out there. I mean, since 2021, he's pitched more than 165 innings every year. 2021, 165, 2022, 184, 2023, 177, 2024, 189. And this year, 168. So again, he's a guy who's definitely going to, be out there or should be out there based on his history. He has been durable. He really has been durable. Um, Okay, so 2025 has been, pretty up and down. We already said that based on that. Although he still really piled up a bunch of strikeouts, kind of showing what type of stuff he has. He actually led, I believe, the National League in strikeouts per nine. His ERA, we all know, was inflated. And he is set to reject the qualifying offer, and he will be hitting free agency. His agent is Scott Boras, and several reports indicate this at age 29, and this is very important. We already know that Pete is looking for at least 7 years, and another Boras client, through several reports, indicate that he may be looking for a 7 to 10-year deal. So that's very important. Very important. What are we looking for in terms of dollars? All right. So the Padres are expected to lose him. They're not going to pay anywhere near that. They're not. Cease is considered among the best starting pitchers options available in the free agency. In my opinion, it's a down free agent market, and with the pitchers starting rotation, the speculation about how realistic a Cease. All right, so let's see here. All right, so why Dylan Cease works for the Mets. Okay, so let's talk about strengths, why it matters, and how big his edge is. So, one of the strengths, he has elite strikeout capability and he has swing and miss stuff. Now, if you're the Mets, you want an ace who can get out of trouble even when contact is solid. Cease has shown he can blow hitters away. And if you get in trouble, this is a guy who can get out of jams. He's also a guy who can just be dominant through, good majority of the game, and that's what you need. Okay, how big is that edge? High. It's a great edge. This helps in tight games, especially late innings, and gives margin in bad stretches. And also, again, that mental edge on hitters. Another strength of his, he's durable and reliable. The Mets have lacked consistent innings from starters. Having a guy who averages 180 plus innings is gold. That's a very high value thing. Now, also, you have peak years remaining. A guy like Zach Wheeler, he really came on in age 29 and I've heard people say Dylan Cease may be a guy like profiles like Zach Wheeler at age 29. He's entering what should be his prime years. If you give him a 7-year contract, you can really expect 5 good years. I mean, I think you can realistically expect 5 good years. Now, if you start doing 10 years, decade-long contract, that's a bit silly. That it really is a bit silly. Okay, so his arm strength and adaptability. If paired with smart sequencing, bullpen support, and defensive backing, Cease can push for ace-level dominance. That's what type of stuff he has. And market distinction and scarcity. There's just really not a lot of arms with his strikeout profile. Really not. If Mets win the bidding, that scarcity, just even jump more. I mean, see, that's the thing. If a Framber Valdez gets signed, Dylan Cease's value just goes up because, there's just aren't that many arms on that are of that level available. There's just not. It's really not. Okay. All right, so now let's look at the contract. So I spoke about the contract for Framber Valdez, and what does a smart contract for the Mets look like? And we're going to talk about a smart contract, not stupid 10-year contracts. All right, so let's look at this. We can do something like this if you're the Mets. 5 years guaranteed, not finished, plus 2 club/player options. So, or you could do a 6-year contract plus a 1-year option. So, we're talking about 7-year deals, but we're structuring it a bit different. And again, this is rather than an 8 or 10-year deal. I don't want to hear that. Don't want to hear that. I'm not interested in that. If that's what he needs, then have him go sign with the Angels or have him go sign with, somebody like that, because I don't think big teams are going to do that. I mean, the Yankees, 8 years, 218, but all right, it wasn't 10 years. I'll just say that. Okay. Again, you could give him incentives, escalators, to make him appeal a little more to the contract. Vesting options, partial no trade, limited trade protection, performance-based voids or buyouts, stuff that, could make him a little more likely to sign. All right. So how, what do you think? What do you think? What's a contract for some of these guys? I'm throwing out stuff out there, writing stuff down. But again, this is just, I could say 5 years. And again, I didn't really give a total amount on this one, but let's just say if I do the 5 years guarantee with two club options or 2 years with those options, that probably is going to project to around 7 years, 200 million. That's going to probably be what you're looking for. That's probably going to be what the contract he's going to be looking for. Not that you're going to do it, not that you want to do it, not maybe you do want to do it, but that's probably what it's going to be based on Corbin Burns, based on Max Fried, based on the current market or the past market, but obviously not far. I mean, it was just last year. Okay. So let me just grade some of his stuff. So how does his stuff grade, or how can I estimate it? So his stuff, his strikeout upside, you know, I could probably say he's the best or one of the best in at least available. So I can say his stuff grades out as an A. His durability, the innings that he eats, is an A minus, very solid. His big game mental toughness, B plus. His fit with the Mets. The Mets would definitely need to upgrade their defense, especially in the outfield and in the infield. So that's a B plus. And his risk to cost efficiency is probably going to be big. Probably going to be a B. Okay. All right. So the next guy that I have, and I have a lot. This is pretty. Again, we're going to talk about all aces, and I apologize for the length. I just really wrote way too much stuff. I researched way too long for this, but you know what? I appreciate you sticking around. Again, like I just feel like we need an ace in just such the worst way. And am I saying Dylan Cease, great fit? Michael King, not well. Michael King, I'm going to talk about now. Michael King, Framber Valdez, nothing's really jumping out at me. Nothing's really jumping out at me. Oh, let's go, move heaven and earth for him. I mean, like, I would say the last guy that I really felt bad that we didn't get and I really wanted to move heaven and earth for, that was probably Yamamoto. That was Yamamoto. Young, 24-year-old pitcher when he was available, but we all know what happened. All right. So another guy that where I just mentioned is Michael King. Michael King of the Padres, formerly with the New York Yankees. And Michael King was part of that package that brought Juan Soto to the Bronx. So Michael King, he's looked very good since 2022. Very, very good. Last year or this year that just passed, he only pitched 73 innings. Some injury concerns. But overall numbers: 5-3, 3.44 ERA, 15 games started. Year before that, 13-9, 2.95. Year before that, he was in the bullpen, 2.75 ERA, 2.29 the year before. So he's had very, very good numbers, good performance, very solid. 2024, he came in seventh in the Cy Young race. He is 6'3", 210 pounds. He's a guy that really profiles like a number two, number three. In 2025, he made 7.75 million. In 2025, King was placed on the IL with shoulder inflammation. He had nerve issues. He also had knee inflammation at one point. So again, this is a guy that has had success in the past. He's also a guy that is coming off medical issue. So when anytime that happens, again, that has to affect the value somewhat, but it also has to affect how the Mets would go, look at this guy long term. Now, before the injury in 2025, King was pitching well. He had he was 4-2 with a 2.59 ERA over 10 starts. He was dominant before that. When he came back, he struggled a bit. He ended up, his next 5 starts, his ERA ended up at 3.44, 1.2 whip. So again, he did not pitch as well. He did not pitch as well. His advanced metrics in 2025, average exit velocity 88.4 miles per hour, hard hit 41% of the time, and barrel percentage 13% of the time. He's a guy that's really not immune to damage when he makes mistakes. He really relies on movement. Early in the season, King's role was really kind of somewhat mixed, reliever, starter, but he really showed flashes of effectiveness. If you're the Mets, you're looking for a guy who can be a starter. You're not looking for a Clay Holmes guy, and if you are, you would pay him like Clay Holmes. You're looking for more or less an ace. You're really looking for more an S and an A's. So there are projections that he could command a multi-year deal, high-value contract. Some speculate around $100 million or more, Okay, so let's look at some strengths. What you're buying. There are obviously some compelling aspects and traits that a team like the Mets would like. Now, he's a multifaceted pitcher. King is not purely a strikeout artist or a contact guy. He has more of a balanced approach, using multiple pitches to get outs. The versatility gives him more ways to succeed when one pitch isn't working. I said when Jonathan, came up, the kid wasn't ready. He just had that fastball and that Vulcan changeup. The slider wasn't developed. The curve really, he wasn't confident in that. So, if you just have two pitchers, you got to be a guy that can rely on multiple pitches to get batters out. So reports say, obviously not reports, but, this is his scouting report. He's got a 4-pitch mix, a sinker, sweeper, changeup, sinker, sweeper, changeup, 4-seamer. So he's got 4-pitch mix. He's going to be 30 years old, but he still has some upside for growth. He really does. So you could say he is entering his prime as well. He has shown flashes of ace level performance in 2024. His best year, posted a 2.95 ERA, 201 strikeouts. And in the postseason, he had that 7-inning strikeout, 12K performance in the wild card. So I like that. I like a guy who has that on his resume. Doesn't have a lot of postseason experience, but, when the time came, he stepped up big. So he's also been a guy, I mentioned that he's a balanced stuff. He doesn't rely too heavily on one pitcher or the next. And he's also a guy that shows high pitching IQ, which allows him to adapt better in high stakes innings. So if he's a guy in a jam, he's a guy that, can think his way out of it. And that's very important. I know some people underestimate that, but it's very important. I've always, even like Jacob deGrom, when he didn't have his best stuff, he was a high IQ pitcher. He can find his way out of those situations. Like a guy like Bartolo Colon late in his career when his stuff wasn't great at all, he was also a high IQ pitcher. And those guys can get out of jams in different ways. Okay, so again, there are some weaknesses that the Mets have to worry about as well. Again, I mentioned the injury, the durability concerns. In 2025, the season was marred by injuries, shoulder inflammation, nerve issue, knee inflammation. Shoulder inflammation, knee inflammation. Those are things that if you're a pitcher, those are worrisome. He was out from mid-May and off the mound for many weeks. Because of these, some projections of long-term durability are uncertain. Is he a guy maybe that has to have a shorter-term contract, more like a prove-it contract in order to get that long-term contract? And if you're the New York Mets, would you do a short-term contract? That's what I would kind of explore if I'm the Mets. Maybe a short-term contract. I know David Stearns loves that 1 year and then another year option. He loves that 2-year, 1 year with the option. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to say this. He's a guy with some really decent upside. If he didn't have this injury plague season with all of these new issues, I would be very willing to give him a contract of around 100 years. With his age, 4 to 5 years. But I'd be very, very, very worried. If you're going to give him a 4-year contract, I'm only, 4 years, nothing over 20 million. So 4 years, $75 million. If you want to give him a long-term contract like that, I'm not giving him more than that. I'm just not. I am just not. He's got to prove himself. If you want to give him a shorter term contract, maybe the AAV goes anywhere from 20 mil to 25 mil, maybe 23 a year. But me probably, I just need him to prove that he can be healthy. It's very concerning for me because Michael King, out of these last first two guys, is the most worrisome. Probably would have been the guy that I would have been confident to sign because he wouldn't command the most money, but now he is assigned the most risk to him. There's the most risk to Michael King because he cannot guarantee me that he's going to be healthy. I mean, I've been mad at Stearns in the past for signing guys with injury histories or have been inconsistent, and then expecting the next year to be different, like Kodai Senga. It's just this. I would a guy who hasn't been healthy for the full 2025 and has been out with multiple different injuries. I can't be surprised if the guy is not going to be there for 2026. I just can't be surprised. So the fit and value for the Mets. So King offers that upside, and he offers the upside as a middle to front rotation, so like a number 3 or a number 2. But health is a concern. If he wants a modest deal, it could fit. It really could be a fit. But anything beyond a modest deal, I'm not buying it. Those ultra long deals, 5 years, anything 5 years, I'm not doing it. 5 to 7 years, I'm not doing it. It's got to be under 5 years. So again, I spoke about how much money I would do. Okay, so those are some free agents. And again, we spoke about a lot of free agents. Now we have some trades. We have some trades, folks. It is 4 o'clock in the morning on my end. Hit that like button. If you're out there, I love you. I appreciate you. I really do. Drop a comment. Let's get into this. The first guy I have on my list is actually Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan, and honestly, I've been reading a lot of articles, and sometimes you have comments from fans, this and that, and a lot of them I'm assuming are Twins fans, and a lot of them are saying, "Oh, if Joe Ryan's going to the Mets, we're getting Jet Williams, we're getting Nolan McLean, we're getting Jonathan, we're getting Brandon Sproat." Then maybe I'll do it. I mean, you gotta. I mean, Joe Ryan is a very nice pitcher. He's coming off career highs. He's got 2 years left on his contract. Again, a guy that does he blow you away with stuff? No, he's 92, 93 mile per hour fastball. He's got very nice stuff. Again, doesn't blow you away. Not gonna blow you away. But again, if you're the Twins, I mean, you want to take advantage of what you had, his upside, and trade him at his all-time high and get whatever you can for him. But again, if you're the New York Mets and you're searching for an ace, he's a guy I would be a little, wary with giving up a lot for. It's got to be the right trade. Okay, so over his MLB tenure, Ryan has posted a 3.79 ERA, so a 3.8 ERA. In 2025, he made the All-Star team for the first time. He has had seasons with solid first halves, second half splits. He's not purely a frontline ace in every start. He's really not. To me, he's always profiled like, more of a middle of the rotation type of guy. This year, more like a 2. But again, like, he wouldn't be the guy. Like, if I acquired him, a Joe Ryan, I would have hoped that we acquired another ace in front of him. I really would. Okay, so the strengths why he would be a good fit is, he's under team control. You have 2 more cost-effective years. He's been pretty consistent and steady. Less injury baggage than other players, not too injury prone. He's very easy to evaluate and forecast. He's like a steady Eddie type of guy. Now, the risks with Joe is we already said he's not necessarily an elite guy. He's not an ace ceiling. In some games, he may be more middle of the rotation to the guy. He may not dominate to the same degree as a top tier arm. So I don't think he has that like psychological edge. All the things I said about an ace. If you didn't buy Garrett Crochet or pay up for him, Joe Ryan, again, depending on what the cost, if the cost, is, compensatory and it's not crazy, yeah, we'll talk. That's a good asset. But, again, I'm not giving up what I was willing to give up last year with Crochet. And the downside in again, most publications are saying that it would require a very hefty package of prospects, possibly including top tier positions or pitchers. And again, Minnesota traded a lot of guys away at the deadline. Didn't trade him. They were looking for a huge haul. All right, now let's look at another guy. Next guy, Sandy Alcantara. Now, looking at Sandy Alcantara, I have, getting my rotation where I wanted to. I have acquiring Skubal, Alcantara, and who do I else? So I have and Edward Cabrera, right? So if you do that, your rotation is Skubal, Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, McLean would be 3 or 4, or you could put Cabrera 4. I mean, again, I want a deep rotation. So, but again, so how do you acquire an Alcantara and an Edward Cabrera? So I'm just going to baseball trade values, and would go into the trade simulator, and they assign Alcantara a value of 10 and Cabrera a value of 16.5. Now, you can, again, do any type of trade package you want, but again, the Marlins, they're going to want value back. So I have a couple top 10 prospects going the way of the Marlins. I mean, if you want to include other players like, Alvarez or Vientos, I tried to stay away from the MLB roster, but you can, alter the package based upon what you're willing to give up. So here are the top prospects I'm giving up. Ryan Clifford. I am giving up AJ Ewing. Those are your top 10 prospects. I'm giving up a top 5 or top 3 prospects from the Mets last year. Luis Angel Acuna. I think that he would get a lot more time and play in Miami. And then I'm going to give up a guy who's been really flying up the ranks as a pitcher, and that would be Jack Wenninger. I think he was ranked number 11 or 13 as the Mets overall prospect. So you're giving up a bunch of top prospects. You're getting a guy, Sandy Alcantara, coming off of, a down year in his respect. But, to be fair, his last second half of the season was much, much better. That's what I'm looking for. And Edward Cabrera, a guy with a couple years of control, a young guy. This may not be nearly enough. It may not be nearly enough. You may have to switch out a couple prospects, but in terms of value, you're giving up 31 points of value and you're getting back 26. So according to baseball trade values, the Mets are getting ripped off. Okay, now let's talk about Sandy. So Sandy has an interesting contract. He underwent Tommy John and he missed 2024. In 2025, he had that first half of the year not so good, second half of the year much better. That's why his ERA is in the 5s, because the first half of the year not good. But he's also signed through 2026 and 2027 with club options. I think they're both like 20 mil or less. So for a guy of his caliber, you're the team, you would exercise his options. Now, some people would think this, saying, oh, he's making $20+ million. Hey, the Marlins would want to unload that money. But I looked at the Marlins payroll. I think including him, there's like $10 million that they have allocated to the rest of the team. So there's like really no money allocated to anyone. Everybody's like on minimum contracts. So he's the only guy making money. So even if you brought back everyone with arbitration, the total team payroll would be around 50 million, probably less than that. So again, I don't think they're like trying to shed him, because again, they're the lowest payroll by far. All right. So again, they're not in any money situation, although the Miami Marlins always want to cut money, but again, not in this situation. So his overall numbers in 2025, 5.36 ERA, 175 innings pitched. And again, that's important. Again, if you're the Mets, a guy who's coming off an injury, and usually Tommy John, you don't get back to where you were until the second year. He still pitched 175 innings. He's a guy, former career Cy Young Award winner. His stuff's still hitting 100 miles per hour on the gun. He was rumored to be available at the trade deadline, though some analysts view as caution about giving up too much because of his surgery and inconsistency. And that's where the package I gave up, again, it's because you're getting two pitchers. But again, there is risk to every move. Every single move, there is risk. Guy like David Stearns, who's been adverse to any type of risk. I mean, the guy is so damn cautious, and that's why 2024 and 2025 have both not gotten the Mets to where they needed to be. And 2024, if I reevaluate that, we failed with the trade deadline. We really did. We failed at the trade deadline because we had a golden opportunity, a team, a magical team, and we just didn't make the trades. Paul Blackburn, being the exception in terms of adding a starting pitcher, but come on, folks. You want to add talent to the rotation. We've had a lot of trouble adding talent to the rotation, especially at the trade deadline. So talking about operating under pressure, a guy like David Stearns, not good under pressure. He's a guy, and I want him to be very aggressive right at the box. Get your ace. Make offers. If you want Alonso, make an offer right off the bat so that you could build your team and start building around your team. It's hard to build a team that makes sense if you don't know if you have an ace, you don't know if you have a number 3 hitter or number 4 hitter. So how could you really build your team? How could you honestly build your team? That's why last year I don't think anyone knew how much of a detriment it was not being able to determine what our team looked like until late January. Okay, so Sandy Alcantara is going to be a tricky guy. He's going to be a guy, tricky. But I also think the caliber of pitcher that he is, it's worth taking a gamble. That's why if you're going to give up assets, I want a guy in there, a young pitcher. I want a young pitcher in there and a guy with nasty stuff. We saw Edward Cabrera late in the year, and the guy's just straight up nasty, and he had his best year. Okay, so that is the last one. No, not the last one. Now, the last one I have is the guy that I want the Mets to make a run at right from Jump Street, and that is Tarik Skubal. He's got 1 year left in the contract, probably going to be coming off his second Cy Young Award win. So one of the most dominating pitchers in the game, if not the most dominant pitcher in the game. So, if you're the New York Mets, I think you got to move heaven and earth for this guy. I already mentioned the type of trade package that I want. So Skubal's obviously with the Tigers. He's going to hit free agency next year. And there's been trade speculation for a very long time about Skubal. But, the fact of the matter is the Detroit Tigers, their team just kind of, I don't want to say overachieved, but just kept winning and winning in the last year and a half that you just couldn't really trade him. You couldn't. So Skubal won the 2024 AL Cy Young Award. 2024, he also achieved the triple crown, wins, ERA, strikeouts. I mean, really, the guy can kind of do it all. He's a guy that, let's look at it like this. Strikeout upside, he's got the best stuff overall. He has the best stuff overall. Let me grade this. Let me grade everybody. So, let's do the strengths and weaknesses. So I did Joe Ryan, going back to Alcantara, strengths. If healthy, he brings proven ace pedigree, strong track record before Cy Young. Marlins may take risk in trading him while market undervalues him. His risk coming off Tommy John. Command and walk issues for Alcantara. Risk of regression. His value is discounted by recent struggles. Okay, Tarik Skubal, his strengths. He's got elite upside, recent top-tier performance. He's a proven dominant pitcher. He is in his prime, has a high ceiling. His postseason success also adds confidence to a team acquiring him. The risk, obviously, is going to be not very expensive. Trade demand will have top prospects going the other way. Risk of overstanding the contract and performance decline. So, the thing is, if you trade for Skubal, you're going to want to work out a contract. You're going to want to work out a contract. And if you give up all these prospects, the pressure is you're going to want to give in to what the demands are. So if Skubal's looking for an 8-year plus contract and you trade Jet Williams, you trade, Jonah Tong, you trade, 3 top 5 prospects, you're going to say, okay, I'll give you the 8, 9, 10 years. So there's going to be a very big pressure on the New York Mets. And again, that's the risk in trading for a guy and giving up all those prospects for a guy who has 1 year left. But again, stuff, strikeout upside, A, durability, innings, A, if healthy, big game mentality, A, fits with the Mets, even with the shaky defense, A minus. But the risk, I got to say, is a C, because there is a lot of risk there. The risk for Alcantara is a B, could be a C. Risk for Joe Ryan. So Joe Ryan, he's like Eddie, steady Eddie. Everything's B plus, and durability innings would be A minus. That's why a guy like Joe Ryan, you kind of grades good just because he's just a guy you can kind of rely on. Now, in terms of the second best stuff on this